Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Beneath the Silence, Healing the Wounds of Betrayal Trauma. Last podcast that we did was an interview with Liz regarding the impact of religious trauma on, on many of us who have experienced it and what that looks like. And today we're going to carry forth that conversation and carry forth a little bit deeper in regarding high control groups and cults within religious betrayal trauma, and there may be a little that's out of religious betrayal trauma as well. So I'm going to welcome Bethany Jantzi to the podcast. So welcome, Bethany, and I thank you for being here. So just before
Yeah.
we get started, I'm going to introduce your research, all that that stuff. So, like everyone knows who have seen the podcast before, and anyone who's watching the podcast for the first time, I don't edit. These are real, raw, and vulnerable. We're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's okay. We're human. So I am going to read Bethany's bio as part of the introduction, and we'll go from there. So Bethany Jantzi has her master's in science in the psychology of coercive control. That is heavy. That's a lot of research in that.
Mhm.
She is a cult and coercive control consultant and mental health professional. Bethany is passionate about helping people understand the intricate mechanisms of coercive control and believes that every person has a right to live free from coercion, abuse, and control. High five. I fully agree with you in that. Yeah. Her research explored cults and high control groups and the weaponization of religious text as a form of coercive control against women. Other areas of interest are trauma, coerced attachment, grooming, and betrayal trauma. There is always grooming, always across the
Mhm.
board. Gaslighting, manipulation. So, trauma coerced attachment, grooming, and adult clergy sexual abuse. Bethany's writing has been published in the academic journal Priscilla Papers, as well as Mutuality Magazine. So I'm going to say, Bethany, how is it best to contact you if someone wants to?
Yeah. Just first off, I want to just say thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's such a privilege because I know that you care so much about this and you put so much work into this, really intentionally delivering such high quality content. So thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for our conversation today. And they can email me. My email address is Bethany at freefromcontrol.ca. And they can also go to my website, which is www.freefromcontrol.ca. And there's a contact form on there as well that they can use. So,
Okay.
and I'm also on Instagram as well at that address, Free From Control on
Okay.
Instagram. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bethany. That's wonderful. And just so everyone, you don't have to try to remember that. It will be in the description of the podcast, so you can just copy and paste. I'll have Bethany's email and her website. And if you know Free from Control, then you can search for that on Instagram if that is your social media of choice. So, um, religious betrayal trauma can leave survivors, of course, in spiritual crises, grappling with both, personal harm and the loss of community. So when, you talk in your research about high control groups, how might cults fit into that framework?
Yeah. So I often will talk about cults and coercive control, cults and high control groups. I'll use those interchangeably. So, but a high control group, sometimes that's a more effective way to understand cults is by describing what it is, which is a high control or a high demand group. Um, and I use that because I think it can give people who are listening a bit more cognitive space and safety for if they see their own experiences being reflected in what I describe as a high control group. But then for other people that I meet with, they're totally fine with referencing their previous group as a cult.
Right.
So I really try and work with what that person is comfortable with using, and there's value in both of those terms. Um, and then I think just another important thing to understand is that cults are not confined to faith, spiritual, or religious ideologies. So we can have all different kinds of family cults. We can have, or kinds of cults. We can have a family cult, which is when there's coercive control in a family system.
Yeah.
We can also have commercial cults. So cults that operate kind of as like a business. We have psychotherapy cults. We have self-help cults. So we can really have these high control dynamics can be fostered really in any kind of context. And it's just that my work and my research came with exploring coercive control within how certain theologies are used against women and to control people. So that's really where my research comes from, but I want people to understand that it can be so much broader than that.
And people may then realize as we go through this discussion today, realize that, wait a minute, what I experienced was a high control group, was cult or cultish,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But if there was that coercive control, it sounds like very much intersecting with
Yeah.
with
Yeah. There's like a lot of key features which we can talk about, but
mm,
a lot of those key features of high control groups and of cults are
mhm.
risk factors for religious betrayal trauma. So within these high control groups, they lack some of the protective factors and they have higher risk factors. So within these groups themselves, people who exist within them are going to be more vulnerable to experiencing this type of specific religious betrayal trauma.
Okay. So what might be some of the patterns that these
Mhm.
groups have and or risk factors that survivors?
Yeah. So some of the most common ones that we see are ones where compliance is really valued over anything else.
Okay.
Compliance and conformity is valued over critical thinking, and compliance and conformity are required to belong. So when you're a part of these groups, you're not really free or encouraged to bring your full self into this group. Initially, it might seem that way that they welcome you in because cults and high control groups, there's always a bait and switch that initially what you think you're stepping into turns out to be something totally different. But by the time you realize that, it's too late in a lot of ways. Um, so yeah, that this idea that in order to belong, your ticket to be a part of this group is your compliance and your conformity. So what we'll see is that questioning is really not encouraged. It's discouraged. And like even having intellectual curiosity, even in like a non-aggressive way, is not acceptable. So that leader, that ideology, they're the ultimate authority, and to question them is really a very huge black mark against you. So that's a big feature of cults and high control groups. Another thing we see is that there's gradual escalating requirements from that person. So the longer that you're in, the more that it requires from you. And again, similar with that bait and switch, where a lot of these groups, if we knew right from the outset what the end goal would be and what this would look like in 6 months, or you would not make that same decision.
Right.
So these groups, by definition, require a level of deception and manipulation. And so
And
the
therefore
people that
betrayal.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so the people
Mhm.
that are drawn into these groups are people that are like searching for answers, people that are looking for belonging. And so it might feel like it actually is safe for them to just accept this ideology, accept this belief system in exchange for that belonging, that sense of identity. So, really, when I talk about the people that are vulnerable to these groups, and there's a higher chance of experiencing this religious betrayal trauma, it's really any human being. Like, unless you're a robot, you have those basic core human needs, and those make us vulnerable to being drawn into these groups. And that's what I really want people to understand is that it's not really just people who are naive or people who don't ask questions that get drawn into these groups. Yeah, these groups are very sophisticated with the way that they bring people in, and they really just leverage our core human desires that all of us have.
And it really sounds like those who may have experienced betrayal trauma previously, whether that is a child, adolescent, young adult, may be more vulnerable to being in one of these high control groups if
Yeah.
that's all they've known.
Yeah, absolutely, Sandy, because when people have experienced that dynamic from a caregiver, from an attachment figure, the kind of disorganization that happens psychologically for that person,
Mhm.
a group, a high control group or a cult that looks like it has all the answers
Mhm.
and is telling you that it will bring solutions to these problems or will help you change the world or discover how to avoid pain and suffering. That will be so alluring to people who have experienced betrayal from other people in their lives. And so, yeah, it almost, a way that I like to help people understand these groups is that in essence, they code um, control as protection. So people are looking for safety and
I was
belonging,
going to
but
say,
they have to, yeah, but
it's
they
that
have to
safety.
trade away their independent thought, their critical thinking.
Right.
And then when they actually join this group, it's control that settles. But what's initially advertised is a sense of protection, safety, and belonging, which would be so incredibly alluring to people who have experienced betrayal trauma.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're looking for that safety, and this feels safe. This feels contained,
Yeah.
in a safe way, in one way or another, until they're in it for however long that they may
Yeah.
find that a piece of them or pieces, number of pieces, are missing about who
Mhm.
who they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
even like the nervous system dysregulation that comes with betrayal trauma, especially like when you've experienced that at like a young age.
Yeah.
Um, our nervous systems, we look for that certainty and that structure. So the very like black and white formulaic, we guarantee this group can help you find the answers. That is so attractive. And initially, that in the box, that black and white thinking can actually feel somewhat regulating for
Yeah.
a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a good segue into the question I had around common psychological and emotional symptoms that you might see in people that you work with, that you support and,
Yeah.
help to empower people who are recovering from, whether this is cult related or, high control groups, within religious betrayal trauma,
Hmm.
or you may see those who are out of that. Um, you know, what might be some of those psychological, symptoms or
Hmm.
and or symptoms, emotional symptoms that you
Yeah.
see?
So we often see a lot of like hypervigilance.
Yes.
For some people, we can find that they actually become very dissociated, very shut down. So it can show up in so many different ways, but I feel like a core experience for people, like in their internal world when they've experienced this, is like a profound sense of confusion, which is like by design because of the way that these groups operate, is that they feel so spun around and twisted, and they're so profoundly confused about what has happened to them. Is it okay? Did they really just experience that? And especially because within these high control groups and cults, their reality is being dictated by an external force. Their perception is being controlled. And so their self-trust has been systematically worn down and dismantled. And so I feel like that confusion piece is always something that will show up. And then when we start to tease it away, other symptoms will come up for them. But yeah, that kind of profound sense of confusion and like a lack of self-trust.
Self-trust. I would also think that their self-worth,
Yeah.
thinking that what kind of person am I, that I'm not listening, that I'm not, following what I'm supposed to follow, that I should be following. There's something that's, that
Yeah.
self-worth.
Yeah. And that's often too because within these groups, there's such a dependency that's fostered.
Mhm.
Um, and often that is done through the use of fear and shame. And
Mhm.
so shame has been cultivated within that person and fear. And so that fear just strengthens that dependence. And that shame separates them from themselves and from their own instinct and their own self trust. And like you said, their own self confidence and their self concept is just totally destroyed and, yeah, disconnected from them.
And that shame, you know, it just continues to grow. And as we know in betrayal trauma, across the board, regardless of what kind or multi-layered, intersecting betrayals, that we internalize. And it's
Yes.
something wrong with me, which, adds to that shame,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. And
adds to that.
especially when within these high control groups, and you can even think about this within like a religious or faith environment, that that pastor and that theology is set up as the ultimate authority, and that this person is a conduit of God's truth, and God has given them divine authority. And so, really, to break from that and to doubt that, you can't do that. So then the only answer that person is left with is that there must be something so fundamentally broken about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like Satan has got a hold of them, or like they are so lost and so far gone. There's a profound sinful nature in them that is like beyond redemption. So, yeah, that shame is
Mhm.
so profound because that ideology, that belief system, that leader, it cannot be wrong. So then the only other option is that the person is wrong.
Yeah.
And so that self-blame kicks in and takes over as well.
Right. And just so for our audience to know the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is I've done a bad thing. Shame is I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
And so that is at a much deeper level, when shame is involved, which is, I would say one of the number one emotions and psychological wounds that we have, you
Yeah.
know, under betrayal. Yeah.
Yeah. And that also like it adds another barrier to that person being able to organize to leave that system or that environment because that shame and that self-blame, it really collapses that person's psychological space for action. So like they're feeling so low, like that don't deserve anything. In fact, they even deserved that harm that was done to them
Mm-hmm.
because they are so unworthy of something better and something different. And
Mm-hmm.
so that really shuts down your psychological ability to organize towards the future and
Right.
to create a space for action where you can be like, no, like, this isn't my fault. Like, no one deserves this. I don't deserve this.
Mm-hmm.
How can I get myself out of here?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all those things are so interconnected. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why people in these systems, they will be stuck in them often for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clients will have all, said to me, how long is this going to take? And, I always ask them how old they are. I said, let's say someone is 40. And I said, it's taking you 40 years to get to where you are right now. It's not going to take you 40 years to heal, but it's also going to probably take much more than 40 days.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it all depends on the support systems. And I mean, we can get, into that.
Hmm.
But I want to continue on this shame.
Hmm.
That's part of our identity we end up having. Something's wrong, right? So when a
Hmm.
person's entire identity, their community, the moral framework that they have been, you know, wrapped up in the group that betrayed them,
Hmm.
what specific challenges might this create when you're supporting someone?
Yeah, it's huge because even if that person reaches out to you for help, they're going to be plagued with sometimes intrusive thoughts about,
Mm,
can I really trust this person? Will this person use my vulnerability and my secrets that I shared to control me, to harm me, to betray me? And so, like, that fear of betrayal and that fear of trusting anyone else, it
mm,
just dogs them. Like, even when they're outside of that relationship, outside of that system and seeking help,
yeah,
it's not like the after effects just stop as soon as they're out of that system or away from that person. And
right.
so it can really complicate that therapeutic relationship.
Mm,
But that's something where like immediacy and like real authenticity can help because all those things are really just grist for the mill. And that if
mm,
we talk about it, we can recognize how that is a consequence, that's an implication from those previous painful woundings. And how can we not just brush that aside and ignore that or trivialize that?
mm.
What does it look like to create safety in this relationship right now?
Right.
Also, what does it look like to still listen to your own intuition? Because we don't want to shut down that. We don't want to encourage people who've experienced betrayal trauma to just jump in 2 feet with a new therapist and push aside any kind of like doubts or concerns they have.
And it's really important when you say about that, that safety in the relationship. And one of the things that it's really important that people going through this or any kind of betrayal trauma, that they find safety within themselves first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost. But before they can even do that, it's they have to learn how to trust themselves because that trust has been so shattered in
Yeah.
by many people,
Mm-hmm.
whether in the cult or the high control group or in whatever the case may be. There's been so much manipulation and gaslighting, and the psychological abuse is very real.
Yes.
That so I always start with that self-care. How do
Mm-hmm.
we take care of ourselves, and what works for one person may not work for another? And I always say as well that self-care is never a chore. So
Mm.
if you normally go to the gym and you like going to the gym, but today you're just exhausted, don't go to the gym. Listen
Yeah.
to what your body is saying, because
Mm-hmm.
going to the gym may not be self-care then. Maybe tomorrow it will be again, but today it may be curling up with a blanket and a good book, or a comedy on Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. It's from there, it's the latter. Then we work on self-compassion because we
Hmm.
are so great as human beings to break ourselves down, and we really suck at building ourselves up. And so many people
Yes. Yeah.
feel guilty or selfish to be kind to themselves. And yet it is
Hmm.
so necessary
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
building that
Yeah.
trust and safety within self.
Yeah. And even sometimes I find clients feel like that is too simplistic and too small of a thing.
Yeah.
But it's those building blocks of reestablishing that self-trust that are so crucial. So, like exactly that example that you gave, as small and as simple as deciding that today going to the gym isn't going to feel supportive, um, that you can make that decision for yourself sends that message that you can trust yourself and you can trust how your body is feeling, how you're feeling emotionally that day. And because when you get this kind of betrayal trauma existing within a religious system or an institution,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many layers to the harm that has happened. So there's
Mm-hmm.
the initial wounding, the initial hurt, but then there's that institutional response and that institutional failure
Mm-hmm.
that really causes it's like a catastrophic loss. And so finding
And,
safety
and it's
within yourself,
and isn't it a catastrophic loss of themselves?
yeah, it's it's really like when you're in a system and they have defined your reality, they have defined the rules, what makes you a good person, a bad person, successful, not successful. When you lose that system,
Right.
the bottom really falls out on your sense of self.
Yes.
And so you've experienced harm, but then you've also lost your entire support system. You've lost the system that conceptualizes what it means to engage with life and to live life and be a good person. And so it really it's a loss that so many people don't understand, the kind of existential shattering that happens when you experience religious betrayal trauma is
Mm-hmm.
that that whole system
Mm-hmm.
has harmed you, and someone that was supposed to be a source of care, protection, benevolence, and like a higher sacred love,
Yeah.
when that is weaponized against you, the harm is tremendous. Yeah.
And it's, yeah, so it's a person finding out who they are as an individual outside, the loss of the community that they've known for however long, right? And trying to find who they are while working through that shame.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not a process for the faint of heart, and
Yeah.
it really does require a skilled practitioner with
Mm.
a very specialized understanding of like all these dynamics and the multiple layers of harm that this person has
Yeah.
experienced.
So
Yeah.
just moving then to, whether it's therapeutic modalities or not, what do you find to be most effective when you're supporting, guiding someone who has experienced, cultic trauma or high control group trauma
Mhm.
as it pertains to religious betrayal trauma? What does that look like,
Yeah.
generally?
Yeah. So there's like so many modalities that can be helpful, but the core thing
Yeah.
is supporting what that cult or that high control group destroyed, which is that person's autonomy
Yes.
and their agency.
Yes.
So then, whatever module you want to use, making sure that that person feels like they are the ones that is every day in therapy genuinely opting into this type of care and this modality and that their autonomy is being
Right.
protected.
Right.
So that's really like the most important thing. And then the other thing I would say, no matter what modality you use,
Yeah.
that shame is like one of the first obstacles that we have to look at, because what it will often sound like for a client is like, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did this. How did I let this happen to me? So that shame and self-blame, it's often one of the first things that we have to start to address, and it will keep popping up over and over. But that's something, no matter what modality, will keep coming
Yeah.
up for people.
Often I've heard, clients say, I thought I was a really intelligent person. I've got this degree or that degree. Like thought I was really intelligent. And how stupid was I to fall for this? Or how did I not know? And, it's because when someone or a group of people are really, really good at manipulation, we don't realize we're being manipulated. That
Yeah.
psychological abuse often shows as grooming,
Yeah.
you know, in one way or another. And it's working on, finding who the individual is,
Mm-hmm.
again, as we've said, but I'm also going to say it's about ensuring the client always feels that they are 100% in control.
Yeah.
That if there is
Yeah.
a an activity to that we want to try with a client, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be, it's that the client has 100% control whether they want to do it or not, whether they want to do it now or not, or that they want to stop in the midst of
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that they are in, that we meet them where they are, the client is, and that they have the agency and the autonomy to say, no, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that, or I'm not ready for that, or I
Yeah.
don't like the sound of that, or okay, what if I don't like it? And I always say to a client, put your hand up and just say, Sandy, I want to stop.
Yeah.
No questions, no judgment. We just stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if they're like, today, I don't feel up for this today.
Mhm.
Like, can we go down a different path?
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So what is the single, and I'm sure there's more than one, but if we can keep it to one or even two, most important piece of advice that you can give to friends, family, partners, you know, of a cult or a high control group survivor? Well, what is the most common mistake also that well-meaning supporters
Hmm.
might make?
Yeah. So one of the mistakes I see a lot is, even though it comes from a good place, when people are concerned and there's a sense of urgency about that person's involvement with this group or ideology, they will often end up replicating some of that control that how the group operates, by demanding that this person leave the group now when I decide, when I show up. So then that like loved one shows up in a very intrusive and demanding way.
Mhm.
And again, we don't want to replicate those same dynamics that that person is using in the group. So that's like a very common mistake that I see. And also just expressing like kind of judgment of that person.
Mhm.
Like, this is so stupid, this is so weird. I don't know why you can't see how it has slowly taken over your life. Like, I don't see how you can't see that. Um, and so I would say, like, one of the most important things, if you want to maintain a relationship with the person
Mhm.
with the hope of helping them take steps out of this group or ideology,
Mhm.
is maintaining a posture of curiosity,
Mhm.
of non-judgmental curiosity. Because the reality is that within this group, at least initially,
Mhm.
there were genuine needs that were being met by this group.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
having curiosity about what those needs are and how you can, or people in the world, or other other resources can help meet some of those needs, that can present that person a pathway out of that group, because they were led to believe that true fulfillment or true healing in like a psychotherapy cult or true salvation in like a faith cult is found in this group. But if you can help them understand that some of those needs can actually be met outside of the group,
Mhm.
you slowly dismantle the totalistic psychological.
Oh, we just froze for a second. Hopefully it'll come back on. Oh, lost Bethany for a moment,
Totally
everyone.
just crashed.
Yeah, that's okay. There you are. That's good.
Weird.
You're back.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
sorry
back.
about that. So what I was saying is maintaining a posture of non-judgmental curiosity
Yes.
around trying to understand the needs that are being met by this group or
Right. Right.
ideology. Yeah.
I often say most, being a survivor of betrayal trauma myself, in one form, the best thing that survivors, again, under any of the umbrellas, of what betrayal trauma is, really need to know that you're there for them. Like, as a friend, family member, partner, coworker, whatever the case may be, it's I'm here
Hmm.
for you whenever
Yeah.
you need, without judgment, without biases, without opinion, because often you may become, when we have judgment or opinion, that person may not be safe for their survivor any longer, at least
Yeah.
in their time of need. So just being able to say, I'm here for you, whatever you need,
Hmm.
you know, I'm here. If you need,
Yeah.
please call me. You know, I'm
Absolutely.
and that's the best.
Yeah. And
So
because that compliance and that conformity was what was exchanged to have that sense of belonging,
yeah,
that non-judgmental acceptance and that commitment to them,
yes,
even if they're still untangling things and working things
yes,
out, is so corrective and healing for that person that they can show up authentically as they are with confusion, with doubts, that you still accept them and are there for them. And that is such a corrective experience compared to what they've experienced in this group.
yeah, absolutely. Or from other friends or family members, right? It's
Yeah.
to be that, you know, keep your opinions to yourself, and the judgment, it's I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And to be believed, that their
Yeah.
experience is to be believed. So as we
Yeah.
wrap up, what final professional message of hope or validation would you like to share with survivors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I would just want to say, as we talked about how people that experience betrayal trauma, people that find themselves drawn into these groups or victims of coercive control, the
Mhm.
way that these systems are set up are meant to be, you can't detect them, you can't see them. And so I would say to them that you saw this for what it was, and you were never meant to be able to do that. And that tells me so much about how you did see things clearly, how you did listen to your instinct, that you saw something that you were never supposed to see. And so I just say that as like an encouragement and something to hold on to
Yeah.
with all the hard work of recovery and healing that comes after.
Okay. And there is a lot of hard work that comes after. Is there any
Mhm.
resources that you would like to share? Or if nothing comes to your mind right now, if you can send me some and I'll put it in the description for our audience, that if there is any place that they would like, to look up for that, then.
Yeah, I'll definitely send you some, but even on my website, I've done like a lot of podcast interviews on different platforms where we talk about different elements of healing and recovering from coercive control and like thought reform and recovering, what that looks like. And so that can be a good place to start. And then I'll definitely send you, there's some like resources that can be really helpful as well. So
Okay.
yeah, I can do
I
that for
think
sure.
I would love to do another podcast with you specifically around coercive control versus covert
Mhm.
control, because they both can be with the same perpetrator, can use both
Mhm.
coercive and covert control. But just so our audience can get an idea of what, so if you're up for that, I would love to do another podcast with you.
Yeah,
Surrounding
definitely.
those two variables, if that's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. And I think this is such an important resource for people. And I definitely feel like, yeah, we want to shine a light on some of these dark places and
Mhm.
push back against that shame and that programming that people have received. And so I think this platform is really valuable for the way that it interacts with those elements.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you, Bethany, so much. Like you're a wealth of knowledge, and it has been my absolute pleasure to sit with you and have this discussion. It really has. I feel honored to be able to be in your presence with your wealth of knowledge. I've learned
Thank you so much.
you so much. So I'm going to repeat Bethany. You can reach Bethany Jantzi at Bethany dot hold on, free from control at gmail.com. That's email. And her website is www.freefromcontrol.ca.
Yes.
Again, it will be in the description, and so you can copy and paste. Don't feel like anybody has to write it down. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Bethany or myself, and Sandy at sandrajoy.ca, or my website is sandrajoy.ca. And um, I just thank everyone for watching or listening to Beneath the Silence, Healing the Wounds of Betrayal Trauma. And remember that healing is possible even from those deepest wounds. For more resources, you can go to Bethany's website or my website as mentioned. And of course, if you're able, it would be wonderful if you can like, subscribe, share on the YouTube channel or on Spotify, just so we can grow the community. And in your sharing, in your doing so, it helps other people who may not know this information, and helps them to not feel so alone. So I thank you for that. And as always, until next time, take gentle care of yourself. And I see you, I hear you, and I believe you. Thank you.